talk about creating safe spaces in Castro.
Did somebody say recovery?
Let's talk about meetings, sex and recovery.
Sober sex? Did somebody say dick?
Let's talk about mental health. Let's talk about... Welcome. You are at the CCC.
Where there are no outside issues with Bonnie Violet.
And Lulu.
Our intention is to, that's your line. Each week, we will provide and create a brave space where we engage in conversations around topics of sobriety.
And our intention is to inspire better spaces for more people in recovery.
By tackling topics used to separate us.
But before we begin, please remember to like, share, and subscribe, or do whatever you do to find us.
Share.
Share, exactly. Let
tell
people
your friends,
know.
Tell your enemies.
How are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty good. Yourself?
I'm good. I'm just a little under pressure. I'm trying to make sure that I look at the camera.
Right. I know we always have something new going on.
No, absolutely. This is what's happening. It's like this is this is messy, and we're getting it to a place where it's gonna just be amazing for all of you. Wink.
Right.
Yeah. So no, how was your week?
My week's been pretty. Do you want me to be honest, or do you want me to lie?
It would be
honestly, I was stuck in my emotions all weekend and didn't do much, but just live in them. I know, not cute.
Okay, but I mean, it's like, did you do anything so you, how'd you get here?
Oh, right. Lots of prayer. No.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
No, I got you.
Yeah, no, I mean, sometimes, I don't know, sometimes you just have to sit through some emotions, and I think that's all I needed to do.
Yeah, no, I think it's sitting through a lot of times. I think the problem with us in recovery is like, I don't like the way I'm feeling, so I'm going to do something about the way I'm feeling. And it's like, no good.
Right.
So for me, honestly, it's like, I had a good week. I mean, work has been fine. I've been really productive at work, continuing my journey. Like one of these days, I'm gonna come in here with a tank top on or whatever, because I'm doing my gym journey. But honestly, it's like I'm loving living alone in the Castro, and I've just been trying to kind of go through this experience with as much grace as possible, and then be ready for Tuesdays when we come back and shoot the shit.
Yeah. How is that independent living kind of thing?
You know what? It's nice. It's honest. It's wonderful, because I think that relationships or anything, you have to take other people into consideration. And I'm pretty self-absorbed. I'm selfish. I like what I like, I like my downtime. And so, yeah, and it's nice. I'm also learning, there are other issues that you could deal with, like living by yourself, but I'll get through it.
Right. Yeah. I wish I had that problem.
Yeah, no, exactly. Yeah. So, our topic for today, let's talk about it.
Let's talk about sex.
I know. First off, let's talk about our new opening. I mean,
right. I know, it's kind of nice. It would kind of threw me off, because I'm so used to doing the, dancing behind the scenes. And I
know, exactly. It's like we're all professional. It's kind of like if you ever come to the CCC, every time they make a change or whatever, I always joke and say, this is a little too classy for us. Yeah.
Getting bougie over here.
Yeah. But today's topic, oh my God,
Speaking of bougie.
Yeah, exactly. Well, bougie. Yeah. This is something we all like to talk about. Sex. Yes, exactly. And there's so much to talk about within recovery. But today we decided that we're going to bring someone in who, has a very, unique thoughts about it. I think we all do. Like we were talking about this before. I'm a professional.
Right.
Okay.
Because we have sex and we're in recovery.
Absolutely. And then we're going to dive in after DJ Wasabi Nuts gives a lovely greeting or a intro.
Yeah, I'm super excited for our guest tonight. In this week's episode, we'll be joined by Juan Garcia. Mm-hmm. Juan is a Bay Area native. He's an event producer that's been sober for 3 years. He likes puppies, but he can't have any. Aww. Before COVID, he started a book club discussing the book, The Ethical Slut, that met here at the Castro Country Club every week. And without further ado, Juan Garcia.
Welcome.
Hey, Juan.
Hello.
We'll let you get situated and then you can dive in.
So glad you could join us tonight.
Me too.
I know. Super excited.
All right, feeling all settled?
Yep.
Awesome.
Am I too loud?
You're great. You sound awesome.
Now it looks like that Saturday Night Live skit where we're talking about, well, I like my
Sweaty ball.
my sweaty balls.
Right.
Exactly. So let's dive right in. Like we were trying to think every time we come up with a topic, trying to think how can we create a conversation, because that's what we want to do. Have a conversation about this recovery. And I realized like for myself, I was so grateful when I got sober that I gained a crap load of weight because I put all of this stuff on the shelf. I didn't have to deal with it. And so I don't know. What's your experience?
Well, let's see. I got sober 3 years ago, and it was kind of something that I was catapulted into from being in relationships with people where we just partied too much. And that was kind of every relationship I had been in since I started dating in my 20s. So yeah, that kind of brought me to my knees. And so when I got sober, my sponsor suggested celibacy. And
How'd that go over?
I had no problem with it.
Yeah.
I was like, it's not working, so I'm happy to do it. Sounds good to me.
Nice. Yeah. When I got sober, my sponsor told me the opposite. He kept telling me I needed to get laid. And like, I went months and months and I was like, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm really not into it. And then when I decided I was going to have sex, I spent like $100 on an eHarmony thing. And then he's like, girl, you can't do that. So then he stopped me.
Yeah, it was the best idea for me. I mean, especially looking back, because even after a year of being celibate and having done the steps, I looked around at my life and was like, wow, I haven't had any drama for a year. So I went another year and didn't do anything, didn't even go on dates. So it was the best thing for me anyway.
I think that so obviously, like I said, I gained like a crap load of weight, but by the time that I was ready, I think the thing that I struggled with was being honest with my sponsor or anyone. Like the behaviors that I had before, I kind of continued them. Like I really like that kind of dark room, kind of sneaking around, kind of clandestine. And so I was doing that. And I put myself in a lot of like interesting, like kind of situations that I wasn't really in control of, because I wasn't loving on me. I didn't like this. And I think that I was compromising myself. And that's the thing, the conversation. So obviously coming in and you finding celibacy and you
Right.
eHarmony. I mean,
Right.
finding, I guess, how do we find a balance coming in? Because I think that it's not always easy for people to talk about sex or not having sex or your insecurities around that.
Yeah. And like when I first got sober though, I was actually in a relationship.
Oh, okay.
I was in a relationship in which I would get drunk and sleep with not him. And then that was problematic because that wasn't our plan. So when I first got sober, we were together in a relationship, and within about a month or so, I moved out and broke up with him.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So no good things happen when you're drunk
Right.
and trying to hook up.
Yeah, well, I mean, but I don't know about you, but I learned that the drinking was an excuse as to the behavior, but the truth is I wanted to participate in the behavior, but I wasn't willing to like change my relationship. And so I think the drinking allowed me to actually do what I wanted to do, as far as like being sexual with somebody else and exploring. I didn't want to, be like not keeping a commitment that I had made. But I don't know, that's just where I was at with it all.
Yeah.
I think I came in thinking that I knew what kind of sex that I enjoyed, and that I was in control of my body. And what I had a moment where I even questioned whether or not I was gay because every time that I would hook up, I was either drunk or high, and I was completely in that. And I don't know if you've experienced drunk or high, but it's like no matter if you think you're in control, you're not in control. And so I didn't have the experience of having sober sex. I didn't know what it was, and I didn't know how to get to it, because when you're drinking and using, I mean, I was powerful, so I could, and all those was, I could go up to the park, to Buena Vista Park, and do something without fear.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, for the most part, I mean, it's liquid courage. You kind of rely on it to do the things you want, get the things you want, be who you think you are sexually. But yeah, after I got sober, I was like, wow. And, doing these sexual inventory and all that work, I realized that I probably had never had sober sex, even before, the drugs and drinking was a problem.
Yeah. There's something to be said about and you started to talk about it, like doing the work around you. It's almost like, I always say, this one connected to that one. Like, when I start to understand why I do things the way I do things, even if sex is not involved, when I start to understand who I am and what makes me tick, then and getting to a place where I understand that having self-esteem, having esteem for myself, so that I'm able to make correct choices. I mean, let's talk about that.
Yeah, my favorite part of the steps and all the step work that we do was the inventory and the sexual ideal. And I think my sponsor does a little extra focus on that because when I speak to other people that have done the work, it's not as thorough of a step.
Yeah, your sponsor is very thorough.
He's awesome. So for me, that's kind of what kept me out of trouble for so long. We do the first step and see how crazy and unmanageable our life is, and that makes you recoil from the drinking and drugs. For me, that's the sexual inventory kind of made me recoil from showing up in a relationship where I wasn't ready.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Do you guys find it like, okay, so obviously I've worked the steps a number of times, and I've worked on that sexual idea, and I've done the inventory. And I think with any situation, it's like, how do I make sure that I'm not just writing this down, but I'm actually like living it? So how is that process for you?
So I turned it into an art project. So I should probably give you one of these posters I made. So it's
please do.
Big giant poster with the guy in the middle, and you draw him, you dress him up, you write all the things you want, you don't want.
It's like
the
a
deal
sexual
breakers.
vision board?
Yeah, it is. And, a lot of my friends have it and they use it. So for me, and this is kind of the stuff I work with my sponsees or work through with them, where you can do all this work and you can be really explicit and put it all on there. And if people don't match up when you meet them, it doesn't mean you can't hook up with them. It just means you can't date them. And that keeps, at least for me, it kept me out of trouble.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's why my sponsor was so much about, like, he was like, get laid, but don't get in a relationship. Cause that's what I would do. I think I was more of would escape into like love or relationships, because in sobriety, I just celebrated 13 years. And I prior to getting in sobriety, I was like a serial monogamist. Like my last relationship I got into right after my marriage with my husband ended. And before that, it was like, I was just a serial monogamist. But in recovery, in 13 years, I think I've dated like 3 people, and no longer than like 6 months. So it's a very different experience. But I've had a ton of sex.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Something I think that's, and maybe it's common in this gay scene, but in a lot of gay scenes, not really being clear about what it is that you want, like wanting companionship and intimacy or whatever, but looking for it from a person who maybe just wants sex, and then vice versa. And add that to already having your issues or your doubts with regards to your recovery and your ability to kind of stay sober. I mean, how do you deal with that?
My lists of what I don't want get bigger and longer and more explicit. So
bigger and longer. Ooh.
right. So, I mean, that's what ends up coming out for me when I'm, living in the steps and applying it to relationships. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But yeah, what the deal breakers are what stack up.
How do you it's interesting, like, okay, so I've had sponsees who have been in relationships, and I usually tell them, okay, my experience is like I have opinions about being in a love relationship and all that good stuff. I usually try to mind my business as far as what like, I'm not trying to tell people what they should or shouldn't do, because I believe that you can take anything and work with it, no matter how messy it is. I'm all about, like, okay, so, when you have another person involved, you have to take them into consideration. So, like, for relationship now, I mean, it's like, how do you deal, because I'm naive, completely.
Naive.
Okay, maybe not naive, but honestly, like, I don't really feel like I've had a relationship that I've had to deal with. Like, I have relationships. I'm in relationship all the time. But as far as like a relationship where I have to kind of balance sex and all that good stuff, usually I get my sex over here, my intimacy over here. We're pretty fortunate because it's like we get to understand intimacy in a way that, like, a lot of people don't.
Yeah. Well, I think communication is crucial. So being able to actually communicate what you want, what you don't want, where you're at in a relationship or not is really important. But I know for me, it took me a long time to realize what it was that I wanted. And I also had to learn my emotions and my feelings to know what it was like I was in need of and what I was seeking, so that I actually went to the correct thing for that. I think it can be very easy to run to sex to like feel a little bit better or to like whatever. And sometimes that's okay.
It's a great escape.
Yeah. So, but it's just about being able to be aware of what it is that your intention and why you're doing it. It doesn't have to be that it's a bad thing. It's just like being able to have an awareness about it and your emotional. I think it's tough sometimes to get to it. It took me a long time to get to a space where I could know my emotions well enough to be like, okay, I'm feeling this way, and sex is not really going to like
fix it
right now.
Yeah, no, exactly.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, but see, the thing is when you walk into the rooms and do all this work, you don't really know what you want. So it's funny. One of the books we read in the book club was The Velvet Rage, and they explain that there's 3 stages to figuring out what you want, even if it is in a relationship, sexually, or from your life. And the first step is coming out. The second step is realizing that this facade that you created to combat the shame you have for being gay is no longer useful. So if you decided, well, I want to be successful, I want a great body, I want to be, fabulous drag queen, all that stuff. Eventually, if that's not authentically you, it doesn't work. So, we're all looking for connection and we want people to really see us, but our knee-jerk reaction when we get dismissed or messed with for being gay is to create these superheroes that we end up being, and that's not helpful if you're trying to be real in a relationship.
And it can be like kind of a process of like elimination. It's just like, it's like when you go to a doctor for a situation, they might have an idea of what's going on, but maybe not for sure. So you might have to do some more like testing here or there to really get a sense of, okay, what is it that's really going on? So I think it's okay. Like part of the process is like doing things that don't feel right, and then realizing that, that's not what I wanted. That's not what I was looking for. And to just be able to learn from that. Cause sometimes I don't think, at least for me, I don't feel like I sometimes don't know it until like I've started to experience it. And I'm like, oh no, this isn't cute.
Yeah. It's almost like on the job training. Like there's not a level of, like, obviously you can practice celibacy, you cannot take action, but I feel like in order to get better, you have to have experience. You have to experience kind of the highs and the lows, and understand and get to a place where you understand no judgment around, I made this choice and it wasn't my highest choice. and now I get to try something different.
Mhm.
You know, it's kind of like say, I'll try it once, you know, I'll try everything once. And if I don't like it, I'll try it again. But I think the problem with sex, and especially with what you were talking about, with all of the trauma or the drama and everything that comes with being a gay, that it's not that easy for some to kind of recover from something that someone else may seem is just a simple, or that is not larger, you know, bigger than it is. And so, I don't know.
Yeah, I just had a sponsee that I've been working with for a year relapse, and I asked him if I could talk about this, so he understands. It's cool. But you know, when we got to the bottom of what was the cause of the relapse, was, you know, halfway into working with him, he had his sights set on being able to date or hook up or whatever, and in his mind, for some reason, he thought, I can do it in a year. And so we got, you know, to the year mark, but we hadn't finished his steps. So he wasn't really ready and didn't have the tools to really manage just getting sober, much less dating. You know, we did get to the part where he saw his character defects. And I was always like, you know, you don't even know how that stuff's going to show up in contrast to another human being yet. So let's like just
morphs
finish.
and change.
Yeah.
It becomes something. Yeah.
Right. And, you know, I just went through a breakup, and I think about it, and I was like, you know, if I was going through that right now, or I'm sorry, if I was going through that in the first year or two, I probably wouldn't have made it. So thank God I was celibate, and it wasn't, you know, the celibacy wasn't to punish myself or deprive myself of anything. It was just so that I can focus on, what do they say? Like, focus on the thing that's going to kill. Wait, it's going to kill you first, or
Yeah. Well, that sounds about right. I think that what I try to do, again, because I don't want to impose my experience on, because obviously folks, they come in with this idea, like, to hear little snippets or little sound bites about, like, you shouldn't use for a whole year or whatever. What I've come to, based on the work that I've done, I always tell them, you are going to know when the time is right for you. I'm not going to tell you what to do or what not to do, but we are going to talk about it, because in the book they talk about, we don't want to be the arbiter of anyone's sex conduct, but I always say, but that means that you should be the arbiter of your own sex conduct.
Right.
Like, it's like, if something doesn't feel right or whatever, and I always, I love this. I always tell my sponsees, I'm like a lawyer. I'm not going to bring it up if you don't bring it up, because I can only work with what you give me. But once you bring it up, I'm going to talk about it again. And so I've had sponsees who struggled with sex over and over again, but will continue to the same behavior. And one of the challenges I have, obviously I have judgment behind me. I'm a Virgo, but I try to kind of come at it from a point of view, like, you know, what are the things that's going to help you to move forward and become a better version of yourself, and get to a place where you can have this, what you want, because you will be able to have what you want. But especially in early recovery, it's like, how do you communicate to someone who's defiant as hell? Because most of us come as defiant as hell.
well, you just let them
Yeah.
fall.
Because, you know, I think you have to allow people the dignity of their own experience. So like letting them like fuck it up, you know,
like
and
that,
hopefully they don't drink or use over
Or die.
you know, or die. Exactly.
Exactly.
But sometimes that's what it takes. All we can do is share, like we're doing now, is like share what our experience is and what worked, maybe what didn't work for us. And then people get to figure out for themselves what's, you know, what to do, I guess.
So we've been chitting and chatting or whatever, but if you're watching and you want to chime in, or you have any comments, you have any questions for our lovely guest, or Bonnie or I, by all means, this is for you.
Yeah. Somebody was asking if you were single.
Hey. All right now. This is and welcome to the Lulu and Bonnie dating show.
Well,
Dating
you know,
show,
what's
right?
funny is when I started the book club, you know, it went through all these different phases. And the first book we worked with was The Ethical Slut, which I I have so many opinions about it, and so did everyone in the group. But
Those are the best kind of book clubs.
Yeah, it was fun. It was
Yeah.
really it's such a like cool little special year because it took us a year to get through the book, and we would read for half the time, and then I'd do round robin discussions from everybody, and you would be surprised.
Did you have like was there a core group like so?
Yeah, there was probably like 5 people that came every single time, and it would fluctuate from 20 people to 15. The first 2 books we did, the first one was Ethical Slut, the second one was Velvet Rage, which honestly it's probably like gay 101. But yeah, there was a phase though where people were showing up, and it felt like it was a dating opportunity, which was fine with me since we were actually reading about ethics on hooking up and dating.
Well, I think what's interesting, like I obviously not sponsors that I've had, but I've seen other gay men who come in and use what they know, and it's a process of kind of letting go of kind of behaviors that worked for you in the streets, so to say, or whatever, and getting to a place where you can be free or figure out what you want. Because I like sex. Sex is, like it says, it's God-given. Like I enjoy it, but I think that it's something for me that I always have to constantly be focused and reviewing and making sure that I'm checking my motives, that I'm making sure that I'm doing this for my motives are altruistic, that I'm in it for the right reason.
Right. And yeah, I mean, back to the Velvet Rage book, they talk about being appreciated for the facade, and if that facade isn't really who you really are, then it's not going to go anywhere.
Right. And the big thing is like things change, we change. So just because something felt right and it seemed like it was our ideal or something that was working really well, just because it doesn't feel that way anymore, it doesn't mean like you failed or anything like that. It just might mean that there's something different for you now. So
growth.
I think that's helpful for me sometimes because I just want to shit on my past, and and that's just not, I don't think that's helpful for me. It's just that was my experience, and it's what seemed to be right for me in that time. Right. And now I can see things different and maybe act different or maybe not. It just kind of depends.
Yeah.
You got to stay in your program, basically.
Yeah.
Make sure do the whack-a-mole, keep all that stuff from popping up.
Well, yeah, I mean, because you really have to check in with yourself and get honest with yourself. It's like, okay, is this feel right for me? I'll check in with your higher power or whatever it is to really, and you're the only one who really knows.
And work on letting go of the shame and guilt about not doing it perfectly, because it's like we're not supposed to do it perfectly. It's like I'm human and therefore fallible, and like I was saying, it's like something that I like to do. It's like I love going to sex clubs because I found that I can get my intimacy and what I need from my relationships with my friends, and I'm not ready, or I don't want to. Ready is not the word because I have a lot of friends. It's that you're ready. I don't want at this moment right now. I'm content not being in a relationship, like a love relationship like that.
Have you dated since you got sober?
No. And honestly, it's like I've tried, and I go through phases where I'm like, maybe I should, and it's mainly because I'm looking at other people and I'm judging how I am based on other people, and I think that my honest me is I'm comfortable and I'm confident right now. And I realize that I don't want to say I don't want to, but I'm willing to be open. It may be that I just have not met that person that got me to kind of start thinking a different way. I always say I'm probably one of those crazy biatches that I'll get into a relationship and get psycho.
We all do.
Right.
I know I do.
For a long time, I recently, within the last year and a half or so, I actually was able to say, I do have a desire to be in relationship with I actually would like to date a couple, but I would like to be in a more romantic kind of different depth of connection with people, and maybe even something that is monogamous or something that is more lifetime, or I don't know. I have a hard time thinking that that's the ideal, because I kind of gave up on it because I failed so many times. And then I just kind of resigned to the idea of like, oh, this stuff's not possible for me. But I was realizing that I was lying to myself. There was a desire to have a relationship with someone else, even if it didn't fit the queer ideal or whatever, that, I just needed to be honest with myself that there's a part of me that has a desire for that. But it's a point where I have a desire and not a desperation.
Yeah.
Where there's been plenty of times in my life, I approach relationships with more of a desperation than the idea of having a desire, and like a really honest, clear desire for myself. That's not also like just lust,
Right. Or the other thing where people use their relationship as their new higher power.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's like, I think it's important that the distinction, that desperation there, because that's when you make choices that like, or your choices are limited because I'm going to take what I can get. And yeah, no,
or you're trying to get them to feel something for
That's
you.
codependency.
Oh, yeah. I can't make you love me.
We had a question from one of our viewers at home. Philip S says, "Is good sober sex possible? How about sex post pandemic?"
Uh-huh.
Well, I was in a relationship. Since I got sober, I've only dated one person, and the sex was awesome. I mean, for me, what was great about it was that I think when you're drinking and you're doing drugs and whatever, you want to have sex, you have that like gumption or desire to make sure it's happening. When you're sober, somebody's kind of got to, I don't know, not for everybody. I'm sure there's people that are just always ready. I loved that I was always prompted because I was like, oh, cool, it's time. Let's,
Ding.
And so without that, it might have been harder for me to rev myself up to the idea and action around it because I'm still insecure, or I don't know, like, I guess I'm just used to being drunk and making that happen or going there. So that was really cool. I learned that it's possible, and it was, it wasn't as crazy or hard as I imagined that it would be.
Yeah, I think that was it sober sex or good sex?
Both.
Oh, well, no, honestly,
It's good sober sex.
It's good sober sex.
Sober sex.
No, I think that good sober sex is possible, but I really think that I had to change my expectations for the outcome, for what it was supposed to be, because obviously when you're doing drugs, I was Superman. Yeah, it's like I'm all, and then I'm done. I'm going to go to the next one, and get to a place where I was good with just having whatever kind of experience I was going to have with this individual and not feel like I was needing more of it. I think that communication is so important. And I'll tie this into like this post-pandemic, I saw a part of that. So I completely vaccinated and I'm living by myself, and I was not, like, I'm still not certain about inviting people over. But a guy that I had connected with before, it was 3 years to the month, which is like, I think that was my higher power saying, you need to work this out. So we ended up hooking up, but after conversation, and it was great because I told him, it's like, you know what? So I gained some weight, I'm not super comfortable and whatever. And he said, hey, we can totally talk or whatever. We ended up talking and diving right in. Well, actually, I got to the door and I didn't have any problem with the erection. I think I pushed the door open. And it was hot. And it was nice about it is that it didn't last 3 weeks. It was like we had it, and we chatted after and kind of cuddled, and I went home, and it was perfect. And so I think that it requires some effort, kind of like pre and post production.
Yeah. So great sex, sober sex is possible too.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, but you also, you have to, it's not going to happen the first time necessarily. It does require practice.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah, exactly. You don't judge yourself if you don't stay up, if you're not able to kind of perform in the way that you expect to perform. And also, you get to pay attention to the fact, like, maybe what I was going for and how I was picking my partners was a little off. Maybe I was going for someone who visually was stunning, but had no personality, or we didn't connect. There was no fire, there was no passion. And so there are all these variables. It's almost like making a good cup of coffee. You make sure the machine's working, you make sure the temperature's just right.
You got to clean out that filter.
Yeah.
Right. Well, and I think one of the things is like just getting sober wasn't enough for me to begin to have good and great sober sex, like good sex just in general. Like I mean, I've had more sex since I've been sober since prior to getting sober. I say that all the time, like it's some sort of badge or something, but that's just been my experience. But it took me, there was still a lot of like, so I have experience of being of sexual assault. And so realizing how that impacted still into sex, even once I was sober, was something I had to come to know. I think I mentioned it a little bit when we were talking about mental health and disassociation. There were times that I was in sexual situations and my whole body, my whole self wasn't present for it. And I wouldn't realize it until I was like in the moment. So I think that's something that's just been another thing to kind of like come to understand about my experience as well.
Yeah, you got to, it's so corny, but Oprah's new book, What Happened to You, talks about all that and how actually the most helpful thing for me, even in relation to getting sober and sex and all that, is that they describe the science behind trauma. And the takeaway is that your body feels it first before it gets to the part of your brain where you can logically process it. So when people say they're triggered from, talking about drugs or watching something on TV or whatever, it's like that is real. Like your body actually is reacting before you can process it. And so I completely understand how it would be difficult for someone to stay sober when thinking about sex or talking about sex, because those things are all associated with each other. It's tricky.
And those things become more raw, like you can feel them and notice them a little bit more obviously than when you're sober or when you weren't sober, I guess.
What are your thoughts on like, I've heard a suggestion about finding sober folks or folks that that are also kind of on your path, like to connect with and hook up with?
That's what that's what I recommended for my sponsee. I was like, just practice, but just do not get involved. And even though, I was still hoping that he would wait until we got through the steps, I knew I couldn't stop him. So I was trying to give him some little bumpers to work with. But the problem with that is if you're not ready for that, and what happened to him was interesting, because he had a very specific thing he wanted to do sexually and it wasn't happening. And so then he started to internalize that and take it personal and compare himself to other people and blah, so that's what led him to relapse. And I just didn't see it coming. So now I get it. Like you if you're not ready, just wait.
Yeah,
try and wait.
I feel like I have to, like I've learned very young not to shit where you eat.
Yeah.
And so for me, the program and in recovery is such it's a place where I go to eat and
sanctuary.
And for a long time, I would have a hard time that if I had a bad sex situation or a relationship ended, then that means that I might have to see this person. And then that impacts my ability to deal with my recovery. So I have to be really willing to kind of put that on the limb, so to speak, in a particular situation. I remember having like a conversation with my sponsor and this person having a conversation with their sponsor to decide whether or not we could, because they also were like just barely at 1 year and I was like at 10 years. And it was just like, we had to be like really intentional about it. And it was still really kind of like,
totally. Yeah. I had the weirdest, I think it's a cool experience, but someone that wanted to date me asked my sponsor if he could.
Oh, wow.
First. So
how did you feel about that? Cause I understand like that. I wouldn't even have that conversation with someone outside of, because of my relationship with my sponsees. But it's like, I get it. I get like folks caring, like being thoughtful about.
Totally. I thought it was cool. Also I was brand new to all this work. So I thought, wow, this is how it's done? Like I was really hopeful if that was the case for everyone, for everyone that was in recovery, especially because, people tiptoe around getting involved with newcomers and or people that may be newcomers again. So I don't know. I thought it was cool. Yeah.
I was briefly in a relationship with somebody who was in recovery, and it was really exciting because like for me at first is like I totally fell in love, and like we could do gratitude lists with each other, and we had like the same spirituality, and like we could really talk about shit that really mattered. So it was like really, really exciting. So much to the point that I moved from Idaho to Chicago. You know, like it was totally not the best idea, but it's still it's what I did because it felt nice to have somebody get you in that way.
Totally. I love it. It's to me, it's anyone that's doing that work it's a turn on for me.
Yeah, no, exactly.
The thing that sucks though is when you break up and then you don't go to any meetings for months because you don't want to see them
changes their course. I always say a great place to start is at least let us get to that sexual idea. The sexual idea is going to give you an idea of what it is that you want and allows you to work towards it. And then you can go from there, because it's like, obviously, if you don't know what you want, then like, if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for everything. Just plain and simple. Something that I want to make sure that I talk about before we stop. So I mentioned, and I'm proud of, I don't have any problem talking about like the fact that I like to go to sex clubs, and it's great because I get to have the many versions of the experiences that I want to have. Like I get to do the things I want to do, and if I get to stop if it's not what I need, and I get to move away from it or whatever. But I also feel like for me, it's so important to have people that I talk to about it, that I say, this is what I'm doing, because it's so easy to, it could be one situation that could take me right back to that behavior that will take me down a dark road.
Yeah. We're only as sick as our secrets. And I truly believe that if there's anything in my life I'm not sharing, then that's something I really need to like look at.
Absolutely.
It's easy to do that around sex, I think.
Yes. So maybe we could wrap up by just kind of talking a little bit about like what's our takeaway? What's your takeaway?
What's our takeaway?
I know.
What's your takeaway, Juan?
Well, I'm just so glad that I started that book club. It was, it was something that was spawned out of me trying to date correctly after a day. I have lots of friends that are in polyamorous relationships. There's one throuple that I really loved hanging out with. Two of them were therapists. And so they were always like, read this book. And, I had been in a throuple relationship before I got sober, and we burned that shit to the ground. But we started to read the book, and it was it was the wrong time, because the premise is that you are able to allow your partner to go do what they want, as long as you have agreement and work through what jealousy is for you. And we were like, never mind. No, that's not going to happen. So when I, was starting to date again, it was someone who already was in an open relationship. And I was like, oh my God, not again. If I'm going to do this again, we're going to read this book. And then I was like, well, I'm going to read this with a bunch of people. So that's how the book club got started. But I would never have read the book otherwise. And, there's some stuff in it that people are turned off by. Like in particular, there was two women that wrote it. So gay men are always like, when they talk about their children, they're like, it was a turnoff. So in any case, I'm glad I started it. We're going to start it again soon. Once things, we can meet again in person, and they're going to start it with the Ethical Slut.
We'll definitely keep you posted. Really quickly, the takeaway that I have is that, this is an issue that, like as much as I wanted to just put it away and not deal with it, it's going to come back because we're sexual beings. I mean, obviously it's different. Everybody shows up in different in the way they're going to show up. But it's like, you either address it in the beginning or you address it at, but you got to address it. So,
right. And I think for me, the biggest, or the thing that I guess, invite God or spirituality into your sexuality. Like they can exist together. And for me, that's something that was unable to do for a really long time. And being able to connect those two has just been really, really helpful. So I would just encourage you to invite your sex into your spirituality as well.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for being here. You were wonderful.
It was fun.
This conversation was great, and we got to have you back. We just want you to know that the Castro Country Club is a clean and sober gathering place for all people and a home for the queer recovery community. We endeavor to be a space where we can all seek wisdom, serenity, and courage and joy. And we want you
tune in every Tuesday at 6 p.m. When we go live on our Castro Country Club Facebook and YouTube channel.
And also look for us at anywhere you listen to your podcast at the CCC. I go to the Apple link. It's perfect.
And I listen on Spotify. But also, we'd love for you to leave us a voicemail. You can do that on our Speak Pipe. Yes, we said pipe. Speak Pipe link. And you can leave us a voicemail there.
And email us at podcast@castrocountryclub.org. And again,
don't forget to
comment, subscribe,
follow, share,
do whatever.
Listen again.
Aren't you on YouTube too?
We are.
Oh yeah, we have you know what? We
That's where I
never
was
mentioned
watching
that.
it. Yeah,
Thank
yeah.
you. Yeah, we have a YouTube channel. It's a Castro Club YouTube channel, and I don't know.
Yes, we are no longer on Twitch.
No, we're
there
not.
was some folks asking about that, but
we're not on
just
Twitch. It
doing
was
YouTube.
too triggering.
Twitch. It's Twitch, not Tweak. Twitch. All right.
Wonderful.
See you next week.
Yes.
He's like, you are done.